Good morning, Year 6, and welcome to our next history lesson, the new one for the Spring 2 half term. Today we are going to be looking at the learning of how did young people's lives change after World War II. Get your pen and paper ready. We're going to start the lesson with a knowing more, remembering more as usual. Okay, question 1. Britain lost the Second World War against Germany in 1945, true or false? Britain lost the Second World War against Germany in 1945. True or false? Number 2. What were the group of women who worked in farming in World War II called? What were the group of women who worked in farming in World War II called? Were they countryside army, the farming women, land army, or women in fields? I'll repeat that. Are they known as the countryside army, farming women, land army, or women in fields? Number 3. In what year was the Blitz, Dunkirk, and the Battle of Britain? In what year was the Blitz, Dunkirk, and the Battle of Britain? And number 4. What word was used to describe the movement of children from the city to the countryside during the Blitz? What word was used to describe the movement of children from the city to the countryside during the Blitz? Okay, let's go through the answers. So, number 1, it is false. Britain did not lose a Second World War to Germany in 1945. Number 2, the name of the group of women that worked on the farms during World War II were called the Land Army. Number 3, the year in which the Blitz, Dunkirk, and the Battle of Britain took place in 1940. And question 4, what word was used to describe the movement of children from the city to the countryside during the Blitz? It is called evacuation. Okay, so our learning objectives today are to understand how young people's education was changed after World War II, to understand how popular culture changed in 1950s, and to evaluate how far young people's lives had changed. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some of these areas here. We're going to be looking at grammar schools. We're going to look at the Butler Act down at the bottom in blue. We're going to look at the middle column, looking at jazz, and then we're going to also look at 1950s culture. Okay, so new vocabulary that we're going to come across: grammar schools, teenagers, jazz, swing, teddy boys, and national service. Some of them you may have already come across and know what they are, but some of the things you might not. So we'll still go into them all today. Okay, so in the 1950s, okay, the legacy of the war was still everywhere to be seen. British society was still strongly influenced by the war. Most grandfathers had served in World War I or the First World War, while most fathers served in the Second. Mothers and daughters played a big part and important roles also on the home front. In the major cities, and particularly in London, there were many vacant bomb sites, unrepaired houses, gardens turned into allotments, and they turned them into allotments so they could grow food because a lot of the land had been damaged. The countryside was peppered with wartime military bases many had now abandoned. So all the soldiers that were working during World War II were all based in all these bases across the country. Now the war was over, they'd all been abandoned, so they all needed to be decommissioned properly. Okay, let's look at these pictures. We've got dancing, we've got some men walking down the street, we've got some young ladies in school uniform, looks like we've got a jazz band in the bottom at the middle, and some soldiers in the bottom right-hand corner. So the question is, how did young people's life change after World War II? What experiences can we see in these pictures? Have a think to yourself, pause the video, and then we'll come back and go through the answers. Okay, so hopefully you've gone through the pictures and had a discussion, had a thought about what you think the lives have changed. Let's have a look. So you've got the top left, you've got the dancing and the jazz group. So new music genres appeared, such as jazz and swing from America. Now, when the American army soldiers came over to Britain to help support during World War II, they brought their culture with them, the jazz music and the swing music, and then that started to appear into the culture, British culture. Education. Secondary school education was made free and compulsory for all. Everyone had to attend schools up to the age of 15 and 16. The bottom left, the Teddy Boys, a man who dressed in old-fashioned style clothing, listened to rock music, rock and roll music specifically, were called Teddy Boys. And then you've also got the bottom right-hand corner, which is the National Service, a 2-year national conscription to train in the armed forces. And we'll go into that a bit more later on as well. So those are just some of the ways in which that life had changed for children, teenagers, should we say, after World War II. Now, we'll start with the National Service. Now, here at the top of the screen is an advert for the National Service. Let's read it out. It says, National Service Acts 1948 to 1955. Notice to men born between the 1st of July 1938 and 30th of September 1938. Requirement to register at local offices of the Ministry of Labour and National Service on Saturday, 17th of November 1956. So, after the Second World War, the young men of Britain were called upon to meet the new challenges in a rapidly changing world. The National Service, it was called. National Service is a standardized form of peacetime conscription, which was introduced in 1947 for all men between the ages of 18 and 30. Now, because of what happened in World War II, a lot of soldiers were lost, and a lot of the men that went to war were untrained. So what they decided to do is put in National Service. So they trained up young men how to use weapons and how to be soldiers for a couple of years, and then they go back to their lives. So if there ever was another incident which they needed more soldiers, they had a highly trained group of people to work with. Okay. The Butler Act in 1944 is also known as the Education Act. What was really important about this is that it changed the legal age to leave school. So you had to be 15 or 16 years old to leave school. Secondary school used to be charged, but they abolished the secondary school fees, and they made all secondary education free for all. They introduced free school meals and milk for children, so that any of the poor children, again, still struggling after World War II, which many of the children were, they didn't have to worry about a hot meal every day. They got that at school. And they organized schools into two types. You organize secondary schools into grammar schools and to comprehensive secondary schools. Now, the grammar schools were focused on academic studies, with the assumption that those children who go to grammar schools will go into further education and into university. But to ensure that they got the children who were ready for that level of learning, they had to pass a test called the 11 plus, which many of you have done this year. Secondary school comprehensives were the other section of the education system, and they prepared children for trades and jobs. So this law was praised by Labour and Conservative politicians, and historians label it a triumph of progressive reform. So think to yourself, talk to your partners, what do you think the positives and possible negatives are that came out of the Butler Act? Pause the video and then I'll give a few reasons why. Off you go, please. Okay, hopefully you've had the opportunity to have a chat about the Butler Act. Now, some of the positive coming out of this is the fact that secondary school learning, education was made a priority. There was no fees for it. You weren't charged to go to school, and there was a compulsory age to stay until the age of 15, 16. Children were given free school meals and drinks and milk, so that, again, they didn't have to worry about having a warm meal. They were well fed. And then children were also given the opportunity to practice for trades, so building, laboring, electricians, plumbers. So they had that option to build, which would actually help develop and build the country back up after all the devastation from World War II. Okay, so here we have a list of different changes or reasons why changes took place. Okay, so what I want you to do is you'll have this in your work pack, or you'll have it on your table, and it should have been set with the link with the website as well if you can't find it. We have 16 statements here, and you need to color code them. You need 2 colors, or if you're not going to color code them, make a grid and say changes and why they took place. And I want you to sort them into the correct section. Which of these statements are changes that happened, that took place, and which statements are why they took place? So you need to match them up and you need to put them into the correct sections. The table on the next slide will show you. So if you've got 3 grids here, you can ignore the third section for a minute because that'll be your second task. But for the first part of the task, I need you to sort out your statements into what changed and why they changed. So you've got some vocabulary there to help you if you need to. What changed and why they changed. Okay. You might want to pause the screen now and give yourself the opportunity to start doing the activity. And when you've finished, unpause and we will continue. Pause the video, please. Okay, hopefully you've sorted them out into those 2 groups, or you've colored them in the 2 so you can identify which ones are which. Okay, so now we're going to move on. You're going to talk about your partners. Now, the first thing, have a think, talk to yourself. Now you've sorted the groups, the cards out into what changed and why they changed. You need to think about, is it a positive change? Was it positive? Was it negative? And why do you think it was like that? Okay, it's okay just saying, oh, this is what it was. This is the change and why it changed. But was it a positive change? Do you think it's a positive change? Does everyone else think it's a positive change? Okay, because then what I need you to do is, as a third column, you need to write down what the positive changes are. So here is your next task. So you should have done the first 2, what the changes were, what change took place, and your challenge to evaluate the positive and negative aspects of the change. So for example, if we take the education, to a couple of examples. Education, you've got the Butler Act and the grammar schools. Okay, so this were what the changes were. Okay, and what was good about why did it change place? It took place so that the teenagers had a role to play in the future of the country going forward. Okay, and it meant a new generation after World War II had different ideas and that they could progress forward. Was this a positive change? Was it a negative change? You could say your opening sentences could be, in some ways, these can be seen as positive changes because, and state why. You could also say that some people have criticized this change because, or change as. Give reasons for your evaluation, your answer, for all the statements that you've done. Okay, pause your screen, please, and then come back after you've done the activity. Thank you. Okay, hopefully you've completed that, and we can now move on to the rest of the activity. So let's test our knowledge from this lesson, making sure we know exactly that we've got in our head and recovered, and it might even help us with our upcoming Knowing More, Remembering More quiz on Purple Mash. So question 1, which act of the Parliament passed in 1944 led to changes in the education system? Number 2, what age were children tested to see if they would be joining grammar schools? Number 3, what new music from America had a big impact on young people after World War II? Number 4, name a male fashion trend that developed in the 1950s. And number 5, name one reason why changes to young people's lives. Sorry, I'll read that again. Name one reason why changes to the lives of young people took place in the 1950s and 60s. Pause the video, give yourselves a minute to answer the questions, and then we'll go for the answers. Pause the video, please. Okay, hopefully you've paused the video and you've had an opportunity to write down your answers. Let's go through them. Okay, so the Act, question 1, the Act that Parliament passed in 1944 that led to the changes in the education system is known as the Butler Act. Number 2, what age were children tested to see if they were joining grammar schools? What's called the 11 plus, so you're 11 years old. Number 3, what new music from America had a big impact on young people in World War II? So after World War II is jazz. Number 4, name a male fashion trend developed in the 1950s. They were the Teddy Boys. And name one reason why changes to the lives of young people took place in the 1950s and 60s. Well, some of the reasons are improvement to the economy, so the increase in money for young people, the change of media, TV, music, and radio, and it's a new generation. New ideas have been brought in from obviously people who've come over during the war and the style that they've been learning, and obviously the education system changed to allow the new ideas and the new roles that these children and the teenagers could have moving the country forward. Okay, so that is the end of the lesson, Year 6. Remember to go on to Purple Mash and complete the quiz, and I will see you for your next lesson later on. Have a good day. Bye.